Testing. Good morning, everyone. Come on, I expected a loud good morning. Good morning, people. Thank you so much. A warm welcome to each and every one of you to the Contract Manufacturing and Private Label Expo. Ladies and gentlemen, this calls in for a huge round of applause. Come on, give it up. As we all know, this is South Asia's largest contract manufacturing and private label platform. I would like to thank each and every one of you present here for giving in your precious time and being a part of this expo. CMPL's Leadership Conference presents insightful speakers and interactive sessions that will focus on the strategic importance of the private brand partnerships. Explore the best practices of retailers, D2C brands, and suppliers, and help you expand your strategic vision. The Knowledge Series brings together brand builders, D2C startups, investors, contract manufacturers, and retailers to discover, build, and enable the growth of India's contract manufacturing ecosystem. Ladies and gentlemen, this is MC Sherlene Fernandez, your host for the two-day CMPL Expo, and I promise you all a very enriching and insightful day ahead. We will start with our first panel discussion of the day, the topic being the Private Label Masterclass, Trends and Perspectives for 2022. I would like to call on stage our moderator of this session, none other than Mr. Sameer Kothari, MD, Vanity Case Group of Companies. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly welcome him with a huge round of applause. Come on, people, we can do better than that. Next, I would like to call our panelist, Prince Chatterjee, VP and Chief Revenue Officer, Beauty on Brands, Reliance. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a huge round of applause for him? Thank you so much, Prince, for joining us here. Next, I would like to call our next panelist, Mr. Vishnucharan M., National Head, Big Basket. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for him, please. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. Sameer, over to you.
First of all, apologies for making all of you guys wait. We had some starting up trouble as expected, but Prince has been busy, and that's probably the reason why we got delayed. As you all read today in the Economic Times, Prince has recently been instrumental in buying up another retail chain, and this time a global one. So before we even start, the context of today's panel discussion is going to be about private labels. And we are privileged to have both the formats of retailers with us, a brick and mortar one and a digital one as well. So without further ado, if I can start, Prince, let me start with you. It's a very basic question. What is a private label?
Okay, so I think that's sometimes basic questions are very tricky questions to answer. Now, you have several definitions of private label. So something that you own, something that is manufactured by yourself, for yourself, is probably the simplest definition that you can talk about a private label. I'd even go to an extent of saying that any brand per se is nothing but a private label to them, which eventually forms as a brand of repute and goes beyond their own ecosystem.
Okay, Vishnu, you want to add something to it?
I think I agree with whatever Prince mentioned. There is no different than what we also think in the digital platform. Private label is something which over a period of time becomes a private brand. And as you clearly mentioned, even for a manufacturer, a brand is a brand. So he himself also has created a brand which is a private brand to him.
Good. So I'm going to try and dig a little bit more deeper into this. The general definition of private labeling would be that you're looking at a retailer, either a digital one or a brick and mortar one, a guy who wants to launch a brand which competes with the traditional brand. And the definition would be that a private label brand would compete mainly on price. So here you have a leading brand which is marketed on TV, on social media, etc. And then you have a private label brand which is given the pride positioning in the retail counter, digital network, whatever. And the idea is to compete with those brands. Do you think that definition still stands, or is it changing?
Depends on the strategy from each of the companies. What we believe is that categories such as non-food and general merchandise, where there is very little amount of brand loyalty, I agree that price may be the most important factor that makes a clear differentiation. But there are other categories which are emerging, where you can become a category leader, become a category creator, rather than exploiting a category. So I would say healthy alternatives, some of the healthy alternative snacking products. So we don't have much of large FMCG brands who are present in those space. So as a retailer, you have the power of building those categories, which will actually open up multiple markets or multiple even FMCG brands to think over it to expand the category horizontally and vertically.
Prince?
My thoughts are like this. See, there is a changing concept which is happening, and particularly if I have to talk about the Indian landscape, there is a huge amount of change in terms of the private brand treatment that we see today versus what it was, let's say, 5 years back. The concept is still very nascent, I would say. It's catching up and catching up much faster. But if you see the change that I'm trying to hint at, the change is essentially that a private brand was initially conceptualized to be kept within the confines or the boundaries of that particular retailer. And it wouldn't really go move out. As rightly pointed out by you, the original thought of a private brand was switch and save. So you have the A brand, you have the B brand, and you have the house brand or the private brand. And you'd offer the consumer almost similar product like the A brand, and the consumer would save significantly. So therefore, and of course, it would also create a stickiness to the format. Now, the new change that I'm seeing is probably that retailers or private brand players are having aspirations to sell their products beyond the boundary of their own channels. Now, this is a new change that I'm seeing. And this probably dovetails well to your first question of what is a private brand? And whereby my response was that any brand is actually a private brand. But today, if you actually see, and we could name a lot of brands today in that context, which started from the boundaries of retail and has gone into further channels, the modern trade, or sometimes even the GT. And Vishnu and I, we were conversing in the morning, and they are also working on a lot of things. And he was sharing with me that they're seeing great success in GT on certain lines. So what started as a private brand is now probably becoming an MT brand and a GT brand. So we don't know where this will end, but what is definitely happening is that there is a confluence or there is an overlap between the brands created by retailers or brand which started as a private brand on one side. And of course, you have the traditional way of the brand sellers doing it. So I clearly see that change happening, and it's visible. It's on the face now.
Excellent. So if I just have to recap both of your points, which are excellent points, I think Vishnu just mentioned that new categories where traditional brands or traditional marketeers have either ignored it or have not found it worthwhile, private labels can come in. And you, of course, are trying to say that even in case of the larger categories, you could have a situation where a retail private brand can have aspirations to become a larger brand. So let me try and get some controversy into this, right? According to you, which is a good private label brand successful at executing this today in India? Aspirationally speaking, who do you think has done a fantastic job?
Big Basket.
Big Basket? Which particular brand in Big Basket do you think has really made that connect with the consumer?
About 6 years back, we launched a brand called Good Diet. So the name itself sounds that it is a healthier alternative option for consumers to choose from. So we built several categories under them, and which were very extremely niche categories. And we never thought that there will be acceptance of the consumers, but we saw that there was an acceptance because the power of data is what we have, and we know that what are the how people are searching their requirements. We have the power of search. So we knew that what they're actually searching, and we used to understand, okay, there is a potential customer base for this. Maybe we can get into these categories and see the potential. And that's how we started with 1 categories. Now we are in almost 8 to 9 categories. The recent launch was brown rice chips. You might have seen different kind of chips, nacho chips or a potato-based chips, but we are trying different kind of categories in the segment, and Good Diet has been a successful brand for us.
I think before I come back to you, Prince, I think that's a fantastic point, right? So we know that the father of Indian retail at some point of time had aspirations to set up an FMCG company, right? And most of us know that that dream of his didn't pan out very well. They spent a lot of money trying to build brands, including by taking Sachin Tendulkar as a brand ambassador, etc. What do you think has changed now? I think data is one thing, and I think if you can just expound on that, I think that's a brilliant point, as opposed to what Mr. Biyani tried to do with his private labeling strategy earlier. What do you think you guys are doing which is much better?
We're not going by that way of looking at an ambassador who can push our brands, but we're looking at taking the route of digital, which is influencer marketing, so which is having a lot of impact, where people influence a lot of people. So it is just not the face that influences a lot of people, but there are a lot of people who are into fitness, who have 1 million followers. And these kind of people...
Sorry. Are you able to hear us? Right at the end, are you able to hear Vishnu?
Yeah. So that is where we are trying to, utilize that channel instead of, going versus the conventional way of having a brand ambassador's face. Today also, if you know overall Big Basket, Shah Rukh Khan used to be our brand ambassador then, but now we don't have a face. It is just the Big Basket's face, which is we're using at the moment.
Excellent. So are you saying that marketing and branding will, especially for private label, moves away from the traditional ways of marketing, branding, and will become more data analytics, more digital?
Yes, absolutely.
And that you think has been the secret recipe for Big Basket?
Yes.
Prince, what do you think?
Sibha, I think in my mind, it would be difficult for me to isolate one brand by saying that they are doing an excellent job and the others are not doing as excellent. I thought in different pockets you'd get a lot of these.
Prince, you're going to have to give us one name.
No, so I'm not going to get myself into that trap for sure. But
it could be an international name.
See, if
one that you're going to buy tomorrow.
Pardon me for saying this. So I'm not part of all those things that you see on the news. So anyway, so I'm here only for the private level part of it. So I can comment only on that. So as I was saying, so I think internationally, if I have to take some names in grocery retailing, the gold standard is probably the Aldi and the Lidl of Europe, and they're truly gold standard. And I've had the chance of seeing them, what they do, and what is the kind of private label that they have. They're absolutely fantastic. If I also have to give you some numbers, many of you might know that the size of Walmart's private label is probably 2 to 3 times bigger than the overall turnover of some of the major multinational companies, FMCG companies. And this is full of Walmart's turnover. Internationally, I'm talking Walmart International. So that's a gold standard for me. I thought in India, there are, in the space of beauty retailing, there are fantastic products done by many of the e-commerce companies who started with e-commerce and now getting into physical retail. They have some fantastic product. I also thought regional beauty players like Health and Glow, they have some fantastic private label products and they have recently launched their color cosmetic, which I thought is a fantastic product. So these are some of the names that come on top, but once again, I stick to the point that it's very difficult for me to isolate one who does a great job. I thought it's pockets. So if I have to talk about someone does a great job in bath and shower, someone does a great job in, let's say, chocolates. And for instance, Aldi and Lidl, their chocolates are very good. So all of you people who travel to Europe might like to pick up a few. Internationally, again, I thought brands like Rossmann, which is a beauty chain, or Hebe, which is a beauty chain in the Europe, and they're very large, extensively large. Their private brands are fantastic. So that would be some of my thoughts.
Excellent. And what do you think about Vishnu's point about data analytics and trying to get closer to the customer using the data analytics?
I think it's a given today, if we have to talk about. And see, I look at it from two different angles. One is the product or the merchandise, and one is how do you reach the consumer. Segregating both of it. So the second part of the question is more about the route or the channel of how you reach the consumer. Of course, the conventional way is no longer good, at least for a country like India. I think we have traveled a long distance, and today, if any product company is not talking about social media reaching, and particularly in the space of beauty, I can still understand that you can get away doing physical retailing or physical presence of your food products. You can still get away doing a little less on social media, etc. But supposing if I talk about the industry like beauty, color cosmetic, today it's absolutely a given that if you're not on social media, you're not doing justice, you're not reaching your customers. So it also depends. So therefore, the point I'm making is that it is very category dependent, and of course, the conventional methodologies work no longer well. Now, imagine a situation, I'm just refreshing all of our mind. Some 2-3 years back, SMS marketing was very, very big boom. And frankly speaking, I don't know if it is happening with all of you, but it is certainly happening with me. I don't see my SMS text messages anymore. I'm more hooked onto WhatsApp. And then someone will say, "Sir, मैंने आपको SMS भेजा था." And I said, "Did you?" And I completely forgot. My airline keeps on sending me the SMSs and it buzzes, but at least I don't care. I don't know if you all look into. So we are now through and through WhatsApp person. And we do video chatting on WhatsApp. And imagine how this has dramatically changed over the last 2-3 years of time. And we've all hooked onto ourselves into WhatsApp maybe only in the last 3-4 years in big time. So channels of reaching consumers are completely changing. And I am in strong agreement, yes, this is something which is happening. And data analytics, let me on that part say, we were always collecting data analytics in some shape and form. We in the sense, all retailers, all companies. A classical thing is the credit of club card membership goes to Tesco, which is a British company. And they really took it to the next level. Now, the club card was on one side offering consumers privileges. On the other side, it was also to understand how can I serve my customers better. Now, we also know that, and these are published things in probably some of the Harvard Business Reviews, etc. Target, which is a US retailing company, does cutting-edge job in terms of data analytics. They precisely know what you're going to, and there is a very interesting, funny story also. You could go and read it on the internet. Now, these were always happening. 50 years back also it was happening. Today it is digital. So what you do on, let's say, one of the most popular e-commerce company today, you go and you browse everything and everything is getting data captured. So the models have changed, but I think...
Is that helping you develop your private label strategy? I mean, considering that we're talking about private labels.
Absolutely. So any data is always helpful, and let's understand two things from the private label perspective, which I'm a very big proponent of. See, what happens is when you are making private label, you are far more nimble than bigger, larger companies. Because if I'm a let's say, $50 billion FMCG company, the way I am also doing data analytics. I know what Nalini wants to buy. And here is a retailer. I am also capturing similar data. I know what Nalini wants to buy. But if I'm the former, which is the big, large multinational FMCG company, the way I would reach, or the time I would take to reach to Nalini with a very curated product.
I have to ask, who's this Nalini?
So,
There you are.
so therefore, and Nalini is the customer I'm talking about, one fictitious customer here. Coincidental, we have one Nalini here. But the point is, when you combine data analytics into private label, it becomes, to me, it becomes a lethal proposition because you are far more nimble than the bigger companies. And this is another great thing. And of course, look at the kind of combination. So if I'm working for, let's say, a US FMCG company, by the time I see the Indian consumer needs this, you go through layers. But if you are a private label player, you say, okay, I'm going to reach to you. You're going to make me 20,000 units of a particular thing. I do a quick test market, and there you go. And if it is successful, you're much faster. So data analytics is happening on both the sides, but when you combine, in summary, when you combine this with private label, it becomes a very interesting proposition in my view.
Excellent. So moving this along in terms of private labeling, right? This is a contract manufacturer's show. So when you look at a private label and you look at people who are launching private labels, which is retailers, either in digital format or brick and mortar, the idea is that you would go and approach a contract manufacturer rather than setting up your own factory. That's basic difference between a manufacturer brand and a private label. So when you look at a contract manufacturer, just curious to know what kind of attributes, what exactly are you looking for in a contract manufacturer when you're looking at launching a private label brand? Vishnu, you want to?
The most important thing is the attitude of a person. That plays an important role, the first impression. And we believe in, we don't call our suppliers or vendors, we call them as partners. It is a strategic association. So it's like a relationship of a marriage. You know, it should last for long. Our relationship with the vendor should last for a long, so that we start something with them, and they should continue to produce us for years or maybe a decade, more than a decade. So, of course, the important aspect of a manufacturer is that he should have the GMP in place, probably the required licenses that is required to produce, and also the technical know-how to manage the quality assurance part. So these are most of the critical factors from a quality point of view. Apart from that, I think the relationship and the values that he or his company has, and how the synergies which we can match towards them, and where we can build a good relationship, is also an important factor for us.
I think I tend to agree with what Vishnu has said, and let me summarize this in my way by saying that there are two things that we look into, the hard and the soft part of it. The hard is more of the data part, the audit compliances, what kind of factory, etc., which is more checklist oriented. But the software aspect is equally important, or I would say probably to me, I'd give it a little more weightage. I don't have a number to it, but a little more weightage. And this is, how do we sync? How do we connect? Do you harbor my vision? Is your vision similar to my vision? Are you innovative enough? And these are some of the software aspects which are very difficult to quantify. But I think I typically tend to look into these kind of things because finally at the end of the day, hard aspects on one side, you need to be comfortable working with a business partner. And I thought Vishnu made a fantastic comment. Every one of us, we talk about partnership. Partnership is more like a marriage. So if you're not compatible very well, there's a fall apart. So that is something we would like to prevent ourselves, because the last thing any one of us would like to do is to have interruptions, because the consumer doesn't care what's your problem or what's your ability. Consumer wants a good product on the right time, value for money. Now, so that software aspect certainly becomes very strong.
So let's go a bit deeper about good products. So as a consumer, when you look at a branded product, because of the brand imagery, because of the association that you have in the mind as far as that brand is concerned, you assume that it's a good product just because maybe Shah Rukh Khan is endorsing it or because it's been sold for the last 50 years, etc. How does a private label convince a customer that this is as good or even better than the manufacturer brand that is available? And what kind of an assurance do you need from a manufacturer to be able to make that claim to your customer? You want to take a shot at it first, Prince?
Very nice question. So I think there's always a dichotomy between business owners and marketing people on how to reach consumers optimally. And without taking names, of course, I subscribe to the view the celebrity endorsement don't work very well these days. That's my personal view. I'm not making a comment of right or wrong. But having said that, I think if I have to step myself into the shoes of a consumer, the first starting point is that I should be able to see a product, locate a product, see and understand the product if it works well for me or not. That's the first starting point. The second is, of course, the proof of concept. I have to first trial the product, I like the product, and then I become the repeat buyer or repeat purchaser of that product. So the core essence here is essentially probably that the product needs to appeal to the needs of the consumer and it should deliver the promise which is written on the pack. Now that's very important. Otherwise the consumer is going to buy only once and never going to buy. So therefore, it becomes extremely important for manufacturers like yourselves to make fantastic products which live up to the expectation of the consumer. And this is not my quote, but I'm borrowing this quote from a CEO of a global company I used to work previously. He used to say, give the consumer what the consumer wants and a little more. And then you have wooed the customer. And I thought this is an appropriate statement, an absolute apt statement. So give the consumer what the consumer is asking for and give a little more and you have delighted the customer. So the product is first. Quite honestly, I as a consumer, I don't care who is endorsing the product. If the product is bad, it's bad. I lost my money. It's a bad taste. Early in the morning, I use the toothpaste and it leaves a bad aftertaste. How does it matter who endorsed that brand for me? So it's money lost. So I think that's the very important thing. And how do you communicate that? The new channels are good enough. I thought the new channels are far more nimble, faster, and they take your message of the product much faster, much deeper. So therefore, the product needs to work. Manufacturers like you have a huge responsibility of supporting this entire mission of giving consumers better brands. And I thought if we are able to, from the industry, support manufacturers like yourselves, there's this skill. And I thought India is in the actual sweet spot. If we stop going outside and start promoting domestic manufacturers, we have a gold mine here to be already waiting for us.
Excellent. Vishnu?
I think I agree with whatever Prince said.
I think we can do away with that. I know both of you agree with everything that each other says.
I'll bring in my perspective also, because customer centricity is what, by large, he took over, which is we also have a meaningful focus on customer. So without customer, we cannot exist. That's a given part. So the first part of the question which you asked is, why would a customer choose a private brand over an FMCG brand, maybe which is a 50-year-old? It depends on three aspects for private label. What is the differentiation you're bringing in, either in price, either in packaging, or an USP claim by itself? So it depends from categories to categories. So as I mentioned, there are categories such as non-food, general merchandise, where there is very low brand salience. People really aren't that bothered about color or, I don't remember the last time when I bought a bucket that I wanted a blue bucket. No, I'm okay with the bucket. It should be a sturdy enough bucket. So there are categories like where there are plethora of brands, where at least 60 to 70% of the market is led by larger FMCG brands. And there are categories where there is a monopoly, where 80% of the categories is held by one single brand. In these are the two categories where influencing a customer becomes a very, very, very tough part for a private brand. So this is where we need to bring in a lot of change in terms of what the product offering is there. One is price, either in packaging or a claim of a USP itself. And the last part of the category would be an emerging category. So where, as I said, there are no traditional large FMCG brands aren't present, and there you become the category leader. You build the category, and there you have an opportunity to charge a premium or even lower your price, or you can bring any kind of an innovation in that area.
I think since, sorry, Prince, go ahead.
No, so I think adding to what Vishnu just said, it cropped up another couple of points in my mind. I hope we are good on time.
Of course.
One of the other important thing is that see, everyone loves to save money. I would be 100% naive not to recognize that fact. Everyone loves to save money. So the proposition or the differentiation theoretically that we talk about, the largest differentiation is probably helping people save money, helping customers save money. Now that's the largest differentiation. The second differentiation that can be offered, or all of us we try to offer, is innovation. Let's understand that there are broadly 2 or 3 types of customers. The early adopters would immediately pick up the innovative products. They would go and tell their friends, the not so early adopters, that, hey, look here, I started. And then this becomes a chain reaction. So therefore, innovation is the second pillar, but I would say that the first one is about saving money. But the central theme here is about knowing. If I don't know, I don't get to buy. Now that's very important. So traditionally we would all do the traditional mechanisms, but I think social media, again, once again dovetailing, plays a very big role. But frankly speaking, certain categories, Vishnu, strongly agreeing with you, pardon me for that. Certain categories you don't have any differentiation. What do you do? A bucket and a mug. What do you do? I still know some people who came up with, in my past life I used to do general merchandise at some stage. They came with floral prints and something which is very jing bang. And my daughter kind of people, I want that pink bucket with that flower, etc. But that's very little that you can do. But I thought in food and into the space of beauty, a lot of innovation is definitely possible. There's a huge headroom for sure.
Since both of you seem to agree on everything, I'm going to ask you one question, which I hope you will disagree, and then I'll open up for questions from the audience if there's any. Digital versus brick and mortar. Who do you think will be more successful as far as the private label brand play is concerned? Please don't tell me you both agree on one thing now on this.
Yeah, I mean, agreement does not mean that it's a bad thing. I thought it's good.
So, but I'm waiting for an answer, Prince.
Okay, so to respond to that, my answer is none would be doing a great job in isolation. So it is a combination. So there's absolute no doubt. It's always going to be an omni kind of an environment where you, let's understand the fact with some data. If you take some of the most advanced markets, e-commerce would be not more than 8 to 10%. I'm talking the Western market, of course. In Asian markets, you could see it at about 20-25%, which is significant, much better, almost double, more than some of the European counterparts. So the answer is that brick and mortar retail is not going to go out of scene, and they're not going to do a shoddy job for sure. The e-commerce is going to continue to do a great job. Private label or brands in both the formats are going to do good. Let's also understand that there, as long as human beings are there, we'd always love to touch, feel a product, and you can't do it digitally. You can see a product, you can see it from all angles, you can feel very happy about that. And let's talk about the space that I represent today, beauty. And now, once again, my hypothetical customer, Nalini, what shade of lipstick I have to sell. I can digitally present to her absolutely brilliantly, cutting edge, but that feel of the texture, that feel of the shade under a light and under a bright light or in a relatively darker room is never going to get replaced digitally. So therefore, it's going to be both of them. Private label brand, I'm equating both of them together. Will need to be successful in both the channels, and it needs to be a combined effort. In isolation, it will never work. That's my view.
Yeah, but Prince, I want to restrict the discussion to private labels. So if you look at revenue maximization for a brick and mortar store, you're looking at revenue per square feet, you're looking at margins per square feet, etc., right? And that's not the same constraint that Vishnu has when he's got a digital e-commerce channel. So I'm trying to understand that when it comes to brick and mortar stores, and when you talk about allocating shelf space, which is very, very premium, to a private label versus a traditional brand, right? And if you talk about color cosmetics, the chances of you trying to take away shelf space from, let's say, the leading color cosmetics player in the country and putting your private label there is probably going to be less effective than Vishnu putting an ad for his private label color cosmetics right up there on his website as compared to the traditional brand. So do you think that brick and mortar retail will have an inherent disadvantage when it comes to selling private labels?
No, see, you're talking more commercials right now, or you're talking more numbers or finances right now. Now, that's for the individual format, or that's for the individual player to identify in what scale they're operating. So, for example, regional players like Health and Glow, they do a fantastic job, an absolute brilliant job in terms of their private label products, and they make good money. I don't know how much, but they do. But so the point is, and of course, space is always at a constraint in a physical retail environment. You do food, beauty, whatever you do. People need to really find what is that optimal mix. It's like a daily work that a CFO and a business leader has to do. But I don't think that's a challenge. You need to find the sweet spot within your own format. Now, essentially, you know, I didn't name Aldi and Lidl. They're doing fantastic, and predominantly they are private label. They're almost over 70-80% private label. They have shown to all of us that you can still survive and give every other big company a run for money just doing private label. Now, we have a format like this. Then you go to the Rossmann or the Hebes of the world, which are beauty retailing companies. And then they have their own private label, and then they have their other brands also. So the point I'm making is that, yes, the constraint that you live with physical retail is the boundaries of brick, but you have to find out a mix, and to me, there is no one-size-fits-all. So you need to figure out, depending on who you are and what kind of space that you can allocate. It's a weighing of how much revenues versus how much profitability that you want to get. But frankly speaking, I think people tend to get towards a private label. Essentially, the first thought is create private label because we want our bottom lines to be going up. We need our employees to be given pay raises, pay hikes, etc., etc. Now that's the first starting point. Then suddenly it becomes, okay, let's also go to the market. So having said that, I think people are figuring out how they have to give and where they have to give. And let me also tell you one more thing. So I know retailers also do this. They show their private label and say, I can give you this space, removing my private label. Should you pay me another 10% more? So those things also happen. So the poor private label is doing a great job that side as well.
Vishnu?
even e-commerce has its own limitation. Probably the cost of reaching out to a customer might be cheaper for an e-commerce, but as he rightly said, the touch and feel is still by large is something a big missing part for our customers. So in order to break that, we are piloting out to start selling our private labels through our B2B channels to Kiranas and GTs and MTs. And recently in Bangalore, we have opened up a purely exclusive private label store called Fresho because fruit and vegetable almost contributes to our 14-15% of business. But yet today, consumer wants to touch and feel to buy a vegetable, right? So we've come up with a model where we have a no-man store, similarly in the lines of what Amazon Fresh did in the US. So that's where we are moving ahead, and probably you might also see some of our processed foods also placed in those stores on a long run. So we're expecting at least 80 stores to be up by 2000 by end of this year, and 800 stores by 2024 across India.
So there you go. So from e-commerce, they're getting
It's a
into
combination.
experience centers, and from physical retailers, poor guys are going towards e-commerce. And I thought the other thing is the customer acquisition cost on e-commerce is very expensive. So, and even the retention cost is very expensive. So therefore, there you go with another limitation on that side. So it's kind of at the end of the day, more or less a level playing ground, I'd say.
Excellent. Yeah.
Testing.
Question for Mr. Chatterjee. I'm talking about the brand of the GeoMart, Snack Tech. What are the criteria was done to select Bikaram Chanmal for production of Snack Tech? There are 3 questions, sir. Can I complete it? Second is, over a time, you also sell their products, their brand on your store. What is criteria in that? Third one is the discount part of the product. How many years or how many days or how many time you are thinking of giving discounts up to level of 50% and more? Is there time criteria decided before or later? Thank you.
So thank you for those questions, but unfortunately I'll have to disappoint you because I represent the beauty part of it, and our group is a very large, diversified group. This part of the business that you're talking about, so I don't represent, so I'm not qualified to actually offer any comments on that because I don't have any data. So I'm unfortunately disappointing you on that, but
If you want to rephrase that question a little bit more general, right? Please try and understand, while they are representing their companies, they're not here to ask and answer specific questions. He did talk about the criteria that they use for contract manufacturers. I think I asked that. I think it's a very valid question. Specific reasons, I'm sure you can understand that they can't give it from the stage anyways. Even if he was from that category, it would not be possible for him to say that here. But I think he did talk about what they think as private labelers, what contract manufacturers should do, what the pricing strategy should be. They talked about that as well. So maybe you need to just extrapolate that to your specific query, yeah?
sorry, so you need to take the mic.
So
Sorry.
about the discount part.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So once again, you got to refresh me with the question. What was it on the discount?
Because you are in a private label, you are offering discounts level up to 50% and more. What are the criteria you calculate to give such discount, and for what time, up to what time you are planning?
Sir, I think these are very marketing kind of decisions on how you want to reach the consumer. And I think my general thoughts, not specific to why it is 50% and why should it be something else. So I'm not getting into those debates. But my general thought is the objective is always any one of us, we want to give the maximum benefit to the consumer. So you can even select the price route to actually woo the customer and switch his or her standard brand to your brand and check your brand out and once you are okay with it, you become a consumer for life. So probably, I'm not getting into is 50% or 25% or whatever is the number that you're talking about, but I think the rationale is offer the consumer a discount which is non-refusable. So the consumer says, wow, this is fantastic. And generally 50%, honestly, I as a customer, you showcase me anything on 50%, even if I don't need it, I'll probably buy it.
Thank you. Thank
So-
you.
Excuse me. Over here. Yeah. Hi. So I want to understand, how do you manage the conflict that emerges out of launching your own in-house brands, private labels, versus the brands that are already there on the platform? So how do you manage? Because I'm sure there'll be a pushback from the other brands that are already on your platform in terms of you launching your own in-house brands and scaling them up. So how do you manage that?
I wouldn't call it as a conflict. Let me give you a small example of how the e-commerce as a category, was built. All thanks to Flipkart. Way back when we had dial-up network, when we did not have, Flipkart started selling books, and they invested a hell lot of money to educate a customer, give a customer the confidence to tell him that your online payment is safe. Please pay through online and buy your stuff. And eventually, if you look back today, or look back from then to today, you have seen the whole category of e-commerce that has grown. It is not that only Flipkart has grown. It made space for multiple organizations to come in this space. And if you see, there is a great ecosystem of e-commerce created. So taking that example, I would replicate it to even for launching a private label product. Today, if I launch a private label product, it is not the objective of, okay, the aspiration can be that you have to be the number 1 or number 2, number 3 brand in your category where you're selling. But the larger aspiration would be to build that category to 2x or 3x, where there is a share of equal share that is retained, or the other brands also grow over a period of time.
If I can just elaborate on what he's saying, I think Vishnu has brought in a very interesting perspective on private labels. He's looking at private labels as brands or as products which generally do not compete with the mainstream brands. And I think that's one of the key takeaways for me, that he's actually trying to find niche areas, trying to find white spaces in a product spectrum where he can launch private labels. Having said that, I'm not going to let you go so easily, because the point that he's making is very valid, which is, let's say you're competing in soaps, right, or shampoos, and you're selling the leading brands of shampoos in the country, and you decide to launch a private label. Do the leading brands of the country come back and give you a pushback saying that you need to go easy? I mean, the gentleman here was talking about the 50% discounts that you're offering on your private label snack. Does the Haldirams or the PepsiCos of the world come back and say that, listen guys, you are, pardon my French, but screwing up the market, and you need to do something about it? How do you deal with that?
In fact, it happens the other way around. Haldirams will come and say that I want to run at least another 20% higher because you're already having competitive pricing. So let me try and, so basically brands come and start discounting more, and they'll start passing on the discounts to consumers. That's what we have seen.
Well, that's excellent. Yeah. So the customer actually ends up benefiting because of this. That's interesting. And Prince, do you?
Pardon me for saying this. I agree again. So I think it's the consumer's markets, and if the consumer is the king. We know this. This is an old tenet, of course. So therefore, if you are offering something which is very good to the consumer, brands which are paranoid about their market share, they will do something to retain their market share. Now, also the interesting phenomena that I see is that when private label was younger or very nascent, early stage in India, when you launched a private label, then you were experiencing a lot of pushback. And I'm talking about some 5-7 years back. Today, I think it's a given. Everyone knows that even if you have not started your private label, कल तो जाके private label start करेगा. So therefore, they are mentally prepared now to see this as a new challenger. So therefore, today the game plan has changed. So if you are doing something, they will try to reciprocate it in some shape and form. And of course, the ultimate beneficiary is the consumer. And of course, a lot of innovation research, a lot of white space evaluation. These are some of the things which is a fallout of this healthy competition, I would say.
Hi. So a couple of questions. First one is, as a retailer, how do you decide which categories or subcategories to enter with the private label? So what are the factors basis which you choose that this would be the better category to start your private label in? The second is a different question, that there are a lot of D2C brands which are doing really well and have now got a listing online as well as in offline space. So again, what are the criteria basis which you decide that this D2C brand now needs to be available at my store? Thank you.
So probably I'll take, I'm jumping into it. I'll take the first question and leave the second question, the easier questions to Vishnu to respond. On your first question on how you take a decision of getting into private label and which spectrum, which categories, etc. See, these are all depending on how you evaluate the situation in terms of the growth rate, in terms of the profitability, where you stand with the brands, and what could bring in optimal benefit commercially, which is nothing but the mix. So while there is no standard formula to it, frankly speaking, it's more to do with what is the kind of profitability that you want to achieve at, what's more easier to launch, establish, move forward. So you take the low-hanging fruits first, but I think the central objective is always, the first starting point is of course that my mix should help my profitability go up. So I think those are the considerations. No standard formula for sure.
To answer your second question, I think I'll talk from Big Basket perspective, what we do for D2C brands. We have certain programs that we have created called BB Accelerate and BB Growth programs. So each of these programs stands for different kind of startups or different kind of brands, a newly launched brand. So we have a growth program for them, where there is a separate team which actually takes care of building that brand from the scratch with a minimal investment. Of course, they should have an aspiration to grow. So, and there is also a program called BB Accelerate, where it is a startup, but it is a 3 years, not more than 3 years older company. And from growth, they go into an Accelerate program. So probably if you have joined us in a growth program, after 3 years, you will be moved to an Accelerate program. And then once Accelerate program is for 3 years, and once you've surpassed that 5 to 6 years, and then you will normally move to the regular model of Big Basket. But end of the day, there is a special care and a special team that takes care of the onboarding process. And there is no restrictions for any brands to come on online platform. Even today, there is a platform that we have created on the app only, which you can see called Vendor Connect, which automatically, where any brand who wants to get listed, they can go and list all their details. It straight away triggers to the person who's handling that category. And there are certain TATs that we follow in order to ensure the listing is smooth.
Excellent. I'm sorry, we're just out of time. And we are going to have another session on D2C brands, and we'll probably come back to that at that time. But guys, thank you very much. I think it's been a very insightful session for us. Just to summarize what we discussed, private labeling started off as a price discounting for retailers. I think I'm very happy and quite impressed to see both Vishnu and Prince talk about the evolution of private labeling, where they're already talking about private labelers identifying product categories, identifying white spaces, and launching brands, and not competing only on pricing. I think as a consumer and also as a contract manufacturer, this is music to my ears. So thank you very much, Vishnu and Prince. It was a great session. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Come on, ladies and gentlemen, we can do better than that. Give it up for them, ladies and gentlemen. That's Sameer Kothari from Vanity Case Group of Companies, Prince, ladies and gentlemen, from Reliance, and we have Vishnucharan from Big Boss. Come on, a huge round of applause for them, please. We have a small token of appreciation for each of you. So, Sameer, if you could do the honors. Hello. I must say that was quite an interesting session, very interactive. Each and every one of us seated out here have gained a lot from this session. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, can we have a huge round of applause for them, please? In the next 5 to 10 minutes, that's approximately by 12:50, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have the next panel discussion on the topic packaging's new mandate and developing private brands. So by 12:50, we'll have the next panel discussion.